Hello, this is Roxy Perez Manrique, and I'm going to explain to you a project that I've been working on in children's literature. I've chosen to tell the true story of the Three Little Pigs, written by John Skiska and illustrated by Lane Smith. Now, everyone knows the classic tale of the Three Little Pigs, but very few are aware of the modern version, which comes from the wolf's perspective. Now, here we have the wolf, whose name is Al, and he's baking a cake for his dear old grandma. And he realizes that he's out of sugar. And also, just to let you know, the wolf is having a really bad day. He's very sick, he's coughing, he's sneezing, he has allergies. But he leaves his house to go ask for a cup of sugar from his neighbors. Now, we know the tale that there were three piggies, and I won't ruin the entire story for you, but I will ruin the ending. I'm sorry. Well, on the last piggy's house, this piggy was smart, and he made his house out of bricks. And he was so smart that he was also a rude piggy. And instead of lending a cup of sugar to the wolf, he insults him. And, the wolf is a really sensitive wolf. When anyone insults him or his grandmother, he becomes furious. So he makes a big scene. The piggy calls the police, who are also pigs, and they arrive to the scene. And to make a long story short, the newspapers paint the wolf to be big and bad, and now he's in jail. Now, this project is aimed for third graders, ages 8 and 9, and this will be presented in a thematic unit. I have focused on different objectives, some of them that will focus on strengthening different language learning skills, some that will focus on critical thinking skills and analyzing a text. I would also like for students to practice debating on an issue. And finally, the last objective would be to create and present an alternative version of a fairy tale using different types of mediums, which I will explain later on. Materials. We're going to need copies of the text, both the original and the new version, audio clips of both stories, access to iPads or a digital board, and open-ended arts and crafts material. This project is divided into 5 sessions. First, we will look at the classic tale versus the new one. The second session will focus on point of view, learning about point of view and perspective. The third session will focus learning on the different elements of a story and also practice letter writing. The fourth session will be a theater storytelling debate in which the students will take the wolf to trial, and he will either be found guilty or non-guilty. And finally, the last session will wrap up with a project, a creative writing project, which will make students create their own fairy tales. Steps, procedures. Session 1, the classic tale versus the true story. So, in this project, I have in mind that we, as a class, have read the classic tale before. And so in this session, we're going to brainstorm what we know, and we're going to review different vocabulary through images and TPR actions. So you can see here the different houses that are constructed out of straw, sticks, and bricks, the characters, the wolf and the 3 pigs. And as I mentioned before, through TPR, I would teach students the different action verbs that are going to come across when reading or listening to this tale. For example, baking a cake, which I will make gestures, sneezing, achoo, coughing. In continuing on in session 1, we will use story props to make this story come alive and also to invite students to participate. As we read this tale, the teacher will be asking open-ended questions to engage readers to participate. And a post-reading discussion. Students will be paired up into reading buddies, and they have a list of questions that they have to answer together and also present to the class, which will be used for the next part of the session, which is to compare and contrast, in which we will use a Venn diagram. Now, a Venn diagram is a great visual way to learn and to see information if you're a visual learner like myself. Now, I would present to students what is a Venn diagram and also clue words that we need to use to compare or to contrast things. As a class, we would compare the classic tale versus the tale that we have just read, and we will look at the similarities and the differences. Now, as we do this together, students are also invited on their own to think of other similarities or differences, and they can do this in pairs with their worksheet. Second session will focus on a point of view and perspective. Now, we know in literature that there's three different point of views: first person, second person, and third person. And we would go over the clue words on when we know which perspective is used. Now, the objective at the end of this session is to go back and look at the two stories and to see what point of view was the classic tale told and what point of view is the new modern version told. Now, to do this, we'll have to do two listening activities. One is the classic tale, and students will be working in pairs, and they have different questions that they have to listen out for and to analyze. In the second listening, there's an audio clip of the true story of the Three Little Pigs, as well as their own set of questions. Students, like I said, are going to be working together to answer them and also to report back to the group their information. In the third session, we'll focus on elements of a story, what elements we need to make a story, and also we will focus on writing a letter. Now, if there is no time to do this final activity, writing a letter, it can be assigned for homework. Now, the letter is to write a personal friendly letter to the wolf, whose name is Al, and the students are invited to ask the wolf questions that they didn't know or they want to ask in general. Now, my favorite session, and I think the students will like this one too, is session 4, in which there will be a theater debate. The wolf will go to trial. Now, there'll be two different teams. As this is imagined for a class of 20 students, I would have 4 different groups. Half of them are pro-piggies and half of them are pro-wolf. And they will have to debate together. And of course, we will work on different phrases and different expressions used in making a debate. And students are invited to be as silly as they want to be, to dress up and have fun. In the 5th and final session, there will be a project required of students, and which this is a way for the teacher to evaluate that the students have met all the objectives. Now, there's a wonderful website from www.readwriteandthink.org, and it's called Fractured Fairy Tales. Now, students have a choice of choosing one of the 3: Little Red Riding Hood, The Princess and the Pea, Jack and the Beanstalk. These are all tales that we would have read in class together, so everyone knows what happens in these tales. Or they're invited to do one of their choice. Now, the task is to give an alternative ending, or to change the characters, or to change the plot, or to simply, as we looked in the true story of the Three Little Pigs, write a story from a different perspective. Now, I made one as an example coming from Little Red Riding Hood, and I began it, and I'll read it to you. So, hi, I'm a wolf. You can call me Biggie. I'm not that big bad wolf that everyone thinks I am. I'm going to tell you the real story of Little Red Riding Hood. You see, She was a girl who was lost in the forest and stopped to ask me for directions. I knew her grandmother, so I helped her get to her house. Turns out her grandmother was out shopping, and so I waited with her and we decided to play dress up. That is when all the trouble began. And as you can see, I'm giving an example of something that they can do and act out and give a different perspective of a classic tale they already know. Well, that is all. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.